Hello everyone, welcome back to the Stitches in STEM YouTube channel. My name is Michaela and this is podcast episode number 33. If you're new here, thank you so much for clicking on this video. As I said, my name is Michaela and I'm a knitter from Dublin, Ireland. And if you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back. In today's episode, I have 2 finished objects, a few whip updates, a few new cast-ons, one acquisition that I think is quite exciting, and also some exciting plans. So we have a lot to get into, so without further ado, let's just get straight into the first finished object, which is of course what I'm wearing, and that is my holly sweater. If you're a returning viewer, you will know how much effort went into this, but I'm so happy with how it turned out. This is my 4th time wearing it. I didn't just put it on for the podcast, I wore it out and about today, and I love it so much. This is the Holly Sweater by Pernille Larsen of Knitting for Olive, and I knit mine in Wild Earth Yarns Aspen 8-ply, which is a New Zealand based yarn. It's 100% Polworth wool, and the grey is in the colour marble. Yeah, I think marble, and the green is the colour emerald. For the red, I used remnants of another New Zealand wool I had left over from another project because I just did not feel the need to buy a whole new red yarn just to do these little bubbles. I knit mine on 3.5mm needles, I think. Yes, 3.5mm needles, and in terms of sizing, I kind of just made up my own size because I couldn't get gauge. So I'm just going to recap very briefly on this jumper because if you're a new viewer, you might be wondering what I'm talking about, and if you're a returning viewer, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I just really struggled to get gauge with this jumper, with this yarn. It's labelled as a DK weight yarn. I would say it's a heavy DK / worsted, at least in my experience. I'm not saying that it's labelled incorrectly, just from the yarns that I've used and the way DK versus Aran or worsted weight yarns feel in my hands, this feels closer to Aran or worsted. So the gauge for this pattern is 21 stitches and 10 centimeters. My gauge was 18 stitches and 10 centimeters. No matter how hard I tried, I could not get a tighter gauge, or so I thought, but we'll get to that. So I knit the whole yoke to pattern, but I did block it like 3 times just to make sure that it was fitting. So I blocked it, I think, once I had gotten maybe halfway through the colour work, and then finished the colour work, I blocked it again, and then when I realised that my gauge was off, I re-knit it, blocked it again, and yeah, through multiple blocking and re-knitting and doing maths and calculations, I figured out that I needed to adjust the stitch count of the pattern to get a size that would fit me, because even if I knit the smallest size in the pattern, it would have been too big at my gauge. So I took a bit of a gamble and I just recalculated from the sleeve split. So I took a bit of a risk because I did follow the pattern for the yoke and then deviated once I split for sleeves and body. But it did pay off because it fits really well. I'm really happy with it. There are a couple of things I would change about it, but as I mentioned in the last episode, I'm only going to be wearing this for 1 month out of the 12 months of the year. So I'm kind of happy to let those little imperfections slide for now, and maybe I'll revisit and try and fix it next year. As for those imperfections, I touched on a few of them in the last episode, mainly the ribbing on the collar that I kind of want to change it to a 2x2 rib. But one development that came up since the last episode is that obviously I finished the whole jumper, and then when I tried it on, I realised the sleeve actually felt a little bit tight. I know that some people get a tighter gauge when they knit sleeves, especially if they're knit on smaller circumference needles. And I did knit these on 45cm needles, which is my usual needle size for sleeves. I did notice that the stitches were stretched around the needle, which should have been a bit of a clue to me that they were going to be a little bit tight, because I generally don't get that when I'm knitting sleeves. It's usually quite comfortable to knit and all the stitches fit quite nicely on that 40cm needle. But in this case, they were stretched a bit around the needle, especially as I got to the end, because I was obviously decreasing, but I just wanted to get it done and off the needles. The way I'm talking about this makes it sound really negative and that I'm about to say that they don't fit or I had to frog them. That's not the case. They do fit. There's just like 0 ease, and I just wanted like maybe 3 centimeters of positive ease in the sleeves. So as I was saying, I know some people get a tighter gauge when they knit sleeves, especially using those smaller needles. I have never had that issue. I have in the past measured my gauge on sleeves versus the body, and it's always been the same. However, out of curiosity, I decided to measure the gauge on my sleeves on this jumper, and I did in fact manage to hit the pattern gauge of 21 stitches and 10 centimeters just on the sleeves. So yeah, that's why they're a little bit tight. So that's a very interesting development, because I could have sworn up and down that I would never ever be able to get close to 21 stitches on this yarn. It was just, I was finding it so thick to work with, and 18 stitches was the tightest gauge that I could get. So I'm shocked that I managed to hit gauge on the sleeves. Obviously it's a little bit of a problem because the sleeves are a different gauge than I had planned, and so they turned out a little bit tighter than I had planned, but as I said, they do fit. I have worn them, and it might be something that I revisit next year. When I initially finished them, I also thought that they were too long, just by like basically the length of the cuff, so that's about 4 or 5 centimeters, and I had planned to wear them just with the cuff rolled up again just for this year, and I thought to myself, maybe I'll fix it next year. But with wear, it actually, like the sleeve kind of pulled up on my arm, and now they're the perfect length. So that's just a good thing to keep in mind, I think, because I've had this happen before where I've thought sleeves were too long just based on a first kind of try on. I have shortened them, and then I've actually worn the piece, and as I wear it, as it kind of conforms to my body and my elbow and things like that, the sleeve gets a little bit shorter throughout the day, and then it's too short. So that's a lesson to take from this. If you ever feel like your sleeves are a little bit too long, just wear the piece for a couple of hours, even around your house, and see if you still think they're too long after that little bit of wear. I'm pretty happy with all of the dimensions. I actually haven't measured it yet, but I will measure it, and I'll just pop it up on the screen here in terms of how much ease there is in the body. The length is perfect. I think I made a really good estimate of how long to make it. It is very warm. The wool is quite woolly. It's not itchy. I don't know what I would compare it to. It's not itchy, but it is woolly, and it did soften up a lot after blocking. Living in Ireland, we have quite a mild climate, and I sometimes worry about the wearability of the warmer things that I've made, like my Dagmar zipper jacket. I was kind of worried about how much wear I would get out of that, and the same for this, because it is quite dense, especially up at the yoke where you have 2 to 3 layers of fabric because of all the floats underneath. And I do tend to run quite warm, but I haven't overheated in this yet, and I think I'm going to get enough wear out of it to justify all of the work that I put into it. For me, this yarn is next to skin soft. I'm not sensitive to wool, so I'm probably not the best person to advise on that, but I really can't imagine this being itchy on anyone. Like, it doesn't feel itchy, but obviously if you have an allergy or sensitivity to wool, that would be a different scenario. But in terms of the softness, it is very, very soft. As for my final thoughts on this jumper, I do love it. I love the yarn I picked. I was probably a little bit too stubborn in wanting to use this yarn for this project. I picked this yarn specifically for this pattern. I think if I was using any other yarn, maybe one that wasn't as special or unique, because this is a special and unique yarn for me, being that I got it in New Zealand, and you know, the opportunity to get a yarn like that isn't going to come up that often for me. So it's a special yarn that I picked out exactly for this pattern. And if I had had the same issue with another more accessible yarn, I probably would have given up and used something more suitable for the gauge. But because I had it in my head that I wanted to use this yarn for this project, I was like a dog with a bone. Like I wanted to make it work, and I'm glad to say I did. It wasn't without obstacles and hurdles, but I persevered. I got there in the end. I don't know if my stubbornness is a good thing or a bad thing, but I think in this case it was a good thing because I do love how it turned out. I've already gotten compliments. As I said, I've worn it 4 times. I wore it into work, and a lot of people in work know that I knit, so they were like, "Oh, did you knit that?" But some of them said it like almost like they were joking, like they expected me to be like, "No." And then so they were like, "Oh, did you knit that one?" And I was like, "Yeah, I did actually." And they're like, "What? You knit that?" So yeah, and I'm so proud of it that I feel like even people who don't know that I knit should know that I knit this. Like, I want to wear a sign on my back that says I knit this, by the way, because I'm just so proud of it, and I want everyone to know that I made it, like, because it took a lot of effort, and it's nice to have efforts appreciated. So yeah, I love it, and we'll definitely get a lot of wear out of it over the next week or two. Today's the 13th of December, so I've already, as I said, worn it 4 times. I'm going to be wearing it more. I love it. My next finished object is a pair of socks, which I've already worn, so I do apologise that they're not brand spanking new for the podcast. Actually, I won't show them too close. These are my Christmas self-striping socks using yarn from Mudputch Yarns, which is a Canadian self-striping yarn dyer. I can't remember the name of this colourway, if I'm being totally honest with you, but I think it was something like Jingle Bell. Maybe it was Jingle Bell, or I should just check. I'll check. Okay, it's called Gingerbread Rock. It's a 6-stripe colourway with greens, pink, red, and some browns. And then for the contrast heel and toe, I used Filcolana Arwetta in the colour Marzipan. I don't know why I did a contrast toe. The last self-striping socks I did, I just continued using the self-striping yarn for the toe. And I had in my head that I was going to do the same with this, but I think I was just on autopilot, and I just switched to the contrast colour for the toe. I would have preferred to do a striped toe, but it still looks good. But I think I would have liked to have those Christmassy colours in the toe as well, but it's fine. These fit really, really well. They fit much better than the last pair of self-striping socks I made. Obviously, it's nothing to do with the fact that the yarn is self-striping, but I have mentioned before that this yarn just feels a little bit different to sock yarns that I've used. It is an 80/20 merino nylon base, but it's just plied differently than other sock yarns that I've used. It's a 4-ply yarn, but each of those plies is itself a 2-ply yarn, so it gave it a weird kind of, I would say I think it kind of takes away some of the elasticity. It doesn't feel as elastic, even in the fabric. I feel like it doesn't feel as stretchy as other socks that I own. So the first pair that I made, I think they were just a little bit too big because they didn't have that same kind of memory and that same, they weren't hugging my feet as much as I like them to, especially on the cuff, because there's not really that much negative ease in the cuff, and so it just keeps falling down, which kind of annoys me. I might fix it, I might not. It probably doesn't annoy me enough to fix it, even though it's not that big of a job. But anyway, so these ones I did 56 stitches and they fit much better. They stay up all day, and even around the gusset I was worried that they'd be a bit too tight, but they fit really, really well, and I'm really happy with them. I did do a slip stitch heel, flap and gusset, and that's probably another reason why they fit better. My other pair, I did a shadow wrap heel, I think, yeah, and shadow wrap heels just don't really fit me very well. So I did a heel, flap and gusset on this one. I was worried about the stripes kind of being a bit too narrow here, but I think they look okay actually. The narrowest stripe is 5 rows, whereas in the rest of the sock, the stripes are all between 6 and 7 rows. So I don't think it makes too much of a difference, and nobody's going to be looking that closely at them anyway, and it fits me better, so that's the main thing. So I don't really have much to say about these. I love them. As I said, I've already worn them. I think I've worn them 3 times already, and yeah, we'll continue to wear them up to the big day itself. So those are my finished objects. I really love both of them. I love this time of year. I love Christmas. It's my favourite time of year. I actually get a little bit emotional when I think about Christmas just because it makes me so happy. I don't know why, but especially like at the start of November, like after Halloween, I'm like, okay, I can really start thinking about Christmas now. And I know that's too early for some people, but for me, I love having that to look forward to. And I'm not the kind of person that I think about, if I start thinking about Christmas at the beginning of November, I'm going to be sick of it by the time it comes around. That just doesn't happen for me. My excitement level is up here all the time, every single day, up until Christmas, and even in those few days afterwards. I just love it so much, and I love that I have some Christmas themed projects this year, which I haven't really had much of before, and it's just really helped me to get into a Christmas spirit. I do have other Christmas-ish or Advent themed projects to show you as well, but we will move on to my longest whip, which is my Ovie Cardigan test knit for Joyan of Tox Knits. It's quite difficult to make heads or tails of this, but I have finished the body, and those stitch markers are where my buttons are going to go, and I'm almost finished the first sleeve. Now, as I said, today is the 13th of December, the deadline is the 16th, and I don't think I'm going to get this finished, but I'm hoping to. I will get at least the first sleeve done. I think I only have like 8 rows left to do before I start the ribbing, so I'm definitely going to get the first sleeve done. And I did weigh my yarn at the start of the first sleeve, so I know exactly how much one sleeve uses, so I'll be able to, and obviously the body is done, so I'll be able to calculate exactly how much yarn the whole thing uses for my size. Speaking of yarn, the yarn that I'm using is from Lamana, and it was sponsored for the test knit, so I'm using Como Grande in the colour Rust, held with their Premia, which is their silk mohair, in the colour, I can never remember if it's chestnut brown or hazelnut brown. I'm going to go with chestnut. So this pattern is a top-down drop shoulder cardigan by Joyan of Tox Knits, as I said, and if you don't follow her YouTube channel, you should, because it's excellent. I love all of her projects. The main feature of this cardigan is these very interesting cables here, which drew my eye the minute I saw it, and I still think they're just gorgeous. I love these cables so much. There is an Ovie sweater pattern that's already released, and that has the cables going down the centerpiece. But on the cardigan, they're going down either side of the button band. I'm going to show the back because I think it gives a better idea of the cable placement. So you've got that V kind of cable on either side of the center panel, and the center panel is a double moss stitch. The pattern calls for a double knit button band, but I did a 1x1 rib, and I did ask Joyan if it was okay if I did that. She said it was no problem. For the buttonholes, I actually think I made them too big, but I'm just going to go in, and if they only need to be made a tiny bit smaller, I'm just going to go in with a piece of yarn and kind of close them up. But if they're far too big, I'll just redo the button band. I don't really mind. I think it's like 7 rows of 1x1 rib, so it was pretty quick. I've only ever done one ribbed button band before. It was on my Carla cardigan last year, and that used toggle buttons, so the buttonholes I think were just made by doing a single yarn over. So they were quite small, and I thought with this cardigan, my plan is to use round buttons, so I thought the buttonholes needed to be bigger than just one stitch. So I did 2 stitches. So I have no idea how to make buttonholes. I didn't even look up a tutorial. I just bound off 2 stitches, kept knitting, and then on the way back, I cast on 2 stitches with backwards loop cast on. So yeah, it worked fine. I don't know if that's how you make buttonholes on a ribbed button band. I think I should have just done 1 stitch. I should have cast off 1 stitch and then cast on 1 stitch, because as I said, they're just a little bit too big, but that can be fixed, so that's okay. I don't know what kind of buttons to use. I do have buttons that are like, what are they called? Horn. I do have horn buttons that I think would be nice, but I only have 4 of them, and there's going to be 5 buttons on this. So if I was going to use horn buttons, I'd need to get more, obviously, but I do think that they'll be nice with this colour yarn. Everything has been really straightforward with this pattern. I haven't had any major issues. I've made notes of a couple of things in the pattern that I think could be worded maybe a little bit more clearly, especially if it were more of a beginner attempting this pattern, although I wouldn't recommend it for a total beginner, but an advanced beginner who might have had some experience with knitting cables or knitting cardigans, but still needs a little bit more direction than an intermediate knitter. I've just made notes where I think like 1 or 2 extra lines could make it clearer for knitters at that skill level. With the exception of 1 mistake in a chart, which I talked about in the last episode, and I had already contacted Joyanne and she had sent me an updated version of the pattern, so it's all fixed. I haven't had any kind of confusion or questions about the pattern. I haven't needed to reach out to her to clarify anything. It's all been very straightforward, very easy to follow, and yeah, I think it's going to be a very well written pattern once it's released. I'm hoping to finish this over the Christmas break when I have time off work. But obviously I do want to get this first sleeve finished before the deadline so that I can weigh my yarn and figure out how much yarn the whole cardigan is going to require. The yarns feel incredibly soft together. I mentioned before that I wasn't too keen on the colours together, and I still kind of feel that way. It might not be the easiest thing to see in this light. They are 2 different colours of yarn, so obviously this is the mohair and this is Como Grande, which by the way is a merino wool. And they're 2 very different colours. The mohair is this cool toned dark brown, and the merino wool is, as the colour name suggests, a very rusty brown. And held together, I think they marl a little bit more than I would like them to. I was kind of hoping that the colours would blend together and I would get kind of a more solid colour that was in between the rusty colour and the dark brown. But instead I am getting this kind of marled effect, which is growing on me. I didn't love it at first, but it is growing on me. I do know that once it's finished and blocked and the ends are woven in and the buttons are attached, that I probably will have a completely different opinion of it. That always happens to me. I really second guess projects when they're in this stage. You know, they have ends sticking out and maybe stitch markers still attached and there's needles and barber cords hanging out of it. And I spend so much time looking at it as well that I don't always love the project in that stage, and I start to think, am I going to hate this when it's done? But once I block it and I do all those finishing bits, it's like transformed. And 9 times out of 10, my opinion just goes way up once it's finished. So I do think that that will happen with this project as well, because I love the cables. I love the overall colour of the yarn. As I said, I just don't love that marling at the moment, but it is growing on me. And I know that I just need to give it a chance and wait until I see the finished object to really decide what my final thoughts are. I feel like I need to address my voice because obviously I have a little bit of a vocal fry situation going on. It is silly season. I was out last night. I was singing along to Christina Aguilera in the bar, and obviously I'm paying for it today, but it was worth it. I do apologise if it's a little bit annoying, but I'm sure we can all relate to a bit of silly season silliness. So I have 3 whips, and I'm going to talk about my latest cast on first because my other 2 are socks. And if you're not a sock knitter, you might find that a little bit boring. So I'm going to leave those till the end so you don't have to watch that if you're not interested. I won't take any offence. I know it's not always the most interesting thing to watch someone talk about the socks that they're knitting if you're not a sock knitter. So that being said, the next whip I want to talk about is something that I mentioned in my last episode, and it is a good old reliable Sophie shawl, Sophie Scarf. I'm using the Sophie Scarf pattern, but I'm increasing more frequently. I'm increasing every 6 rows because just to get it wider faster. The yarn that I'm using is Sandnes Garn Sunday in the colour Jazzy Pink. My lighting is definitely having an effect on it, but it is a fuchsia pink colour. I'll put up a picture of it. I did briefly talk about this in my last episode as a potential plan because I was going through a bit of a knitting slump and I just wanted to cast on a Sophie shawl. I wanted to cast on something easy, but that was still interesting enough with the increases and the I-cord edge. but like also quite mindless. And I just felt like a Sophie shawl would scratch that itch. I also said that my mum had been stealing my Sophie shawl, which is red, and she's been stealing it, you know, on the colder days. And I thought, well, that's the perfect excuse to make a Sophie shawl. I can make one for her. So me and my siblings are sharing the Christmas present between us for my mum. And we were kind of throwing ideas around for what to get her. And I said, well, she's always stealing my scarf, so why don't I knit her a scarf in her favourite colour, which is pink, and we can just split the cost of the yarn, so that way the present is from all of us. So this is a win-win-win situation, because I was able to add yarn to my stash, buy yarn, scratch that little itch of buying yarn without having to pay for the whole thing myself, which was nice. We went 3 ways on it. I also get to knit a Sophie scarf without adding another scarf to my growing collection of scarves for myself. My siblings get a present to give to my mum, and my mum gets a scarf in her favourite colour. Who could argue with that logic? It's just flawless. So I'm holding Sandnes Garn Sunday Double. It's a fingering weight yarn. They didn't have double Sunday in this colour. I don't know if it comes in this colour, but I just got Sunday and I'm holding it double. They're actually 2 different dye lots. I have 4 balls and 2 balls from 2 different dye lots, but I figured if I hold dye lot 1 with dye lot 2 together for the first half of the scarf, and then the other ball of dye lot 1 with the other ball of dye lot 2 for the second half of the scarf, that it would work out. The lady in the shop did offer to get me 4 of the same dye lot, but I explained what I was going to do, and she was like, oh yeah, well, that's fine. If you want to do that, you can do that. And then it obviously helps them get rid of old dye lot, so I didn't mind doing that. I am knitting this on 4mm needles, and I'm almost at the point now. Let me show you how big it is. There you go. I'm almost at the point where I can start decreasing. I'm not following any pattern for length. I'm just increasing until I use up the first 2 balls, and then I'm going to start decreasing with the other 2 balls. So this is what I have left. Oops, hair. I'm surprised there's any hair left on my head with the amount that I shed. These are the first 2 balls, and I think there's 8 grams left of each of these, so I only have a couple more increases to do, I think, until I have to start decreasing again. The last time I did this, where I weighed my yarn before starting, I left myself like maybe 3 grams. So let's say I had 100 grams. I had 100 grams to increase with. I kind of stopped when I had 3 grams left, just in case decreasing used up more than increasing. But I actually find that with the Sophie scarf or Sophie shawl, whatever, decreasing uses up less yarn than increasing. So I think I'm going to take a risk and knit until the very, very last scrap of those 2 balls. And then I'm going to start decreasing with the other 2 balls. And hopefully that'll be okay. We'll see. I don't like being left with an annoying amount of yarn, so I really am going to try and use up as much as possible. But yeah, I only started this last weekend, and as I said, I'm almost finished the increases, so I'll definitely get this done before Christmas. I've been having a lot of fun knitting it. It's scratching that itch, and I do love squishy garter stitch. I don't like wearing garter stitch in a garment. I just don't love the look of it, but I do really like how it looks in a shawl or a scarf, and it obviously feels very squishy. It's really nice to hold. It's really satisfying. It feels nice on these needles, and I think that's just what I needed to cure my knitting slump. We'll move on to my sock whips. So as I said, if you're not a sock knitter and you find this boring, feel free to skip ahead to plans and acquisitions. So these are a pair of socks I cast on a couple of weeks ago using an Olivia and Oliver Fibres sock set from the sock set advent calendar last year. The advent calendar came with 5 sock sets. I destashed one of them, and this one was the 4th one, I think. Yeah. So I would have opened this on the 4th Sunday of Advent last year. The sock sets are all based around the seasons. So this one is the winter themed one, and that's exactly why I cast it on at this time of year. I haven't used the other 3 sock sets yet, the spring, summer and autumn ones. I had planned to use them during spring, summer and autumn this year, but I just didn't get around to it. But I did want to use the winter one, and it probably is my favourite one of the whole Advent. The main colour is this very pale, very kind of desaturated purpley pink colour, and it's got kind of brushes of, again, like a desaturated purpley blue here, and then very intense speckles of dark navy or almost black, I would say. They're more visible on this side, like here, here. When I showed this yarn in the last video, I mentioned that I wanted to do like a textured sock with it, and actually in the advent calendar, each sock set came with a little QR code for a pattern, but it wasn't a free pattern. It was usually a discount, if I remember correctly. But the discount was only valid for a couple of weeks. And I'm not really one to be buying patterns just because they're discounted, so I didn't get any of them. And when it came time to looking for a pattern to use with this yarn, I mentioned in my last episode that I wanted to do like a textured sock pattern, something like Hermione's Everyday Socks, which I have knit before. But then I remember that I had this book, which is Ready Set Socks by Rachel Coopy. I got this very early in my knitting journey. I think I got it for Christmas the year I started knitting. So I started knitting in the August and I got this that Christmas, and I knit a pair of lace socks from it and I loved them. I was obsessed with them. I still wear them. Like they're one of my best fitting pairs of socks. But I haven't knit anything else from it, and I do like the patterns, but I just haven't gotten around to knitting anything else from it. And I just thought that that was a bit of a pity because there's 10 patterns in here and they just weren't being used. So I decided to have a look through this book to see if there was any patterns that I wanted to use with the Olivia and Oliver Fibres yarn. And I decided on this pattern called Hines. And within each pattern, there's an option for fingering or DK weight. This yarn is fingering weight. All of my socks are fingering weight, so I'm following the fingering weight pattern. But it's just simple knits and purls to make this lovely textured stitch, which is exactly the kind of pattern that I was looking for to use with this yarn. One thing that I didn't realize when I first looked at the photo of this pattern was that there's a different, they're symmetrical, so there's a different chart or pattern for the left and the right sock, which you would not know by looking at them, at least not with this yarn. Maybe with a solid yarn you might see it more. If you can see a difference between the left and the right sock, please let me know, because I can't. And when I started working on the first sock and I realised that I was going to have to be working from a different chart for each sock, I was kind of like, oh God, I'm going to have to think about this. I'm going to have to like use my brain, and I don't really want to use my brain. Like I just want to memorise the chart and go with it. But the charts are very similar to each other, so it actually doesn't require that much work to memorise them. And I can read my knitting as well, so I know what the two chart options are, and if I'm not sure what I need to be doing on one sock, I just look at the stitches below it and copy those. So it's not difficult at all. It doesn't require any more of my brain than I wanted to, so I'm really happy with it. I was so happy with it that I decided to make this leg a little bit longer than I usually do. I usually do 60 rows for the leg, but for this one I'm doing 72 because it's a 6-row repeat, and I'm going to start the heel now on this sock. So yeah, those are I'm going to call them my winter socks, and they're bringing me a lot of joy right now. I think the yarn is beautiful and the knit purl pattern isn't taking as much time as I thought it would. Like I was kind of worried that maybe I would get bored of it or that I would prefer to work on just plain stockinette, but I actually really like working on it. It works up much faster than I expected, and so it's kind of addictive because as I said, it's a 6-row repeat. So when I'm on row 2, I obviously want to finish the chart, and then the 6 rows actually don't take me that long. So I'm like, okay, I'll just knit another 6 rows, and then it just keeps going and going and going. And they're working up a little bit faster than I expected. The last few pairs of socks that I've knit, I have kind of not rushed through, but I have enjoyed working on them so much that I've gotten them off my needles pretty quickly. These are taking a little bit more time. I'm not working on them every day, but that's okay with me. I'm just enjoying working on them. I know I said I have 3 whips. I actually have 4. I forgot about one of them, and it's not a sock, so I'll talk about that one first. So my next whip is a self-drafted cabled jumper. Yeah, self-drafted, but not designed. But I didn't design it. So it's based off a jumper that belongs to my granddad. It's an Aran cabled jumper, and it's too big for me, so I want to replicate it in a size that fits me better. I'll pop a picture up of it here. The front centre panel was damaged by moths a few years ago, and it was before I learned how to knit, so we got someone else to repair it, and they just replaced it with a double moss stitch, I think. But the back panel is a honeycomb cable panel, and that's what the front panel originally was. So I'm replicating it with the original honeycomb panel in the front instead of the double moss stitch that you'll see in the photo. The yarn that I'm using is Explorer Knits and Fibres, Rocky's DK, I think. Yeah, it's a Rocky's DK. It's a superwash DK merino. And the colour is called Avenoir, which is this stunning colour of dark purple, but like kind of a desaturated purple. This and the limelight colour that I worked with from Sorella earlier in the year are my 2 favourite colours that I've worked with this whole year. So I knit up a swatch using some different cable patterns from the jumper to get an idea of my gauge. I knit this on 3.5mm needles. Even though this is a DK weight yarn, I think it's a little bit on the lighter side. It's 274 yards in 100 grams. It doesn't say meters, but I think that's like 250 meters. So it's definitely on the lighter end of a DK weight yarn. So I knit my swatch on 3.5mm needles. So in the viewfinder, it looks a bit see-through, but I know that that is not a good indicator of how it will actually look when worn, because when you wear it, you're obviously going to have another piece of clothing or your skin behind it. So it's going to be more like that. Not as see-through. Anyway, so that's my swatch, and based on that, I've started doing some calculations to figure out how many stitches to cast on, etc. The original jumper looks like it was knit in panels and seamed together, and I have no doubt that it was machine knit, so obviously I'm going to be hand knitting it. I'm going to knit it drop down, top down, drop shoulder. I'm going to start with a kind of standard back yoke shaping with German short rows, pick up for the front shoulders, work down, shape the neckline with increases, join under the arms, and the rest is easy. The first little bit has been quite difficult to figure out, and I am making a project vlog for it, which is going interesting. I have never made a project vlog, and you would think that like it's no different than making a podcast, like you just sit in front of a camera, but the vlogs are like obviously a lot more casual, and for me it just feels weird to be filming myself knitting in bed or knitting like on my sofa or something. It's just I'm not used to it, and in terms of camera angles and the lighting and stuff, but maybe that doesn't matter as much with a vlog. I do watch a lot of project vlogs. I love watching vlogs by Mathilde from Nestled in Knits. I find them very relaxing, and I kind of am taking notes to see how she films things, because she's done so many of them and I feel like they get better every time. And so I'm trying to just kind of get some inspiration for how to make my project vlog good as well. So yeah, that is my swatch. I always reuse yarn for my swatches. I don't keep my swatches. I have nowhere to keep them, and I just feel like they'd be clutter if I did. So I always reuse my yarn, and so I just put my swatch on like a barber cord, and I leave it attached to the ball of yarn. And then when I cast on, I'll generally start with a fresh ball in case I need to refer back to my swatch for whatever reason. And then once I've kind of gotten into the rhythm of things, I'll undo my swatch and I'll use the yarn from that then, once I need a new ball. This is going to be hard to show because I'm in the middle of German short rows, but I'm also going to frog this. But this is what I have. Not much at all. I cast on for the back neck. I started with this honeycomb panel, which you can't really see. There, you can kind of see it there better. The original jumper had 4 of these honeycombs going across, but based on my gauge calculations, I decided to do 6. But I've actually realised that I should just stick with the 4 because I won't have enough stitches in the whole like back panel to include all of the cables that I want to include from the original jumper. So each of these honeycombs is 8 stitches. So if I remove 2 of them to go from 6 honeycombs down to 4, that'll give me 16 stitches back that I can allocate to a different kind of cable pattern. I hope that makes sense. So I do need to restart this. I haven't obviously done that yet. But yeah, that's my very little progress on this jumper. I have some really, really exciting plans for this. I want to make it a free pattern. I want to make a free video tutorial. Not with this sample. I want to make another sample and make a free video tutorial for it. So we'll see if all of that goes to plan. It's already proving to be a little bit more difficult than I thought, but I do think that once I get past the back yoke and the front shoulders, then the rest of it should be smooth sailing. In the project vlog, I kind of go through more of the calculations, the maths. I'm using Stitch Fiddle to create the chart for myself. So in the project vlog, I go through how I do that and how I figure out how to construct the back yoke using German short rows. So it's not meant to be an informative vlog. I don't want anyone learning from it because it's very much me learning as I go. I really do think that knitting is like 70% maths. Maths and numbers like don't lie. So if you do your maths correctly, if you do your calculations correctly, things should work out. And that's what I want to show with this vlog, that it might look complex to create a cable chart like this or to self-draft a jumper from this. But if you're looking at the numbers and you're doing the calculations correctly, like you can do it. Anyone can do it. I haven't done it yet. But I have confidence. I have faith in myself that I can make it work. And yeah, I think at this point you probably know how stubborn I am. So I will keep working at this until I get it. My last whip is another sock, but I'm very excited about this one. These are Advent self-striping socks. So they're from Freckled Whimsy, who's a self-striping dyer in the US, I think. Apologies if she's actually in Canada. But this yarn was sent to me by a viewer, Marissa. Thank you again, Marissa, so much for this yarn. I've never had an Advent self-striping yarn. So this is really, really exciting. And it's from the 2022 advent, but I don't care about that. It's just fun to work with. And the idea is that you knit a stripe every day in advent. So there's 24 different coloured stripes and you knit one every day. I probably won't knit all 24 because the sock will be too tall for me. The yarn came in 2 separate 50-gram skeins. And for me, socks usually weigh between 25 and 30 grams. So if 24 stripes weighs 50 grams, then I think I calculated that 30 grams would be about 16 stripes maybe. No, this doesn't make sense. 17 stripes? But that doesn't make sense because I'm already on stripe 10 and I'm only halfway up the foot. I feel like I'm going to have a moment of realisation where I realise that I've made some mistake in calculating that, and I'll explain in the next episode. But we'll see. Anyway, so today is the 13th of December, as I've mentioned multiple times in this episode. I am on stripe number 10, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I'm on stripe number 10. So I'm obviously a little bit behind. But as I said, I'm not going to use all 24 stripes. So I don't really feel a huge need to keep up with this on a daily basis. And I'm also at a point where I think I should have started, sorry, these are toe up, as you can see. And I'm going to do a heel flap and gusset using a toe up heel flap and gusset that I've used before. So I know that it fits me really well, but I think I should have started increasing before this point. So I might need to rip back, and that's why I've kind of paused on these for the moment, because I'm waiting just to get a minute to measure these with a ruler and figure out if I need to start increasing. But I have a feeling that I should have started my increases already. So these have just kind of been in the corner for the last 3 days, and I'll get back to them. But yeah, I am having a lot of fun knitting these up. If I really wanted to, I could have got someone to wind it up for me so that I didn't get spoiled with the colours. I have a rough idea what the colours are. They're all like pinks, blues, and I think there's some greens in there. I don't know what colour is next. And the way I'm handling that is I know each stripe is 7 rounds. So I've been knitting the first 6 rounds of every new colour. And then the next day I knit the final round of that colour from the previous day plus the 6 rounds of the next new colour. Because if I knit 7 rounds of each new colour, by the time I finish the 7th round, the next colour is kind of coming out of my sock that I'm holding my skein in, and so I get spoiled for the next day. So I'm trying not to spoil myself, and it's working well so far. I haven't been spoiled of any of the colours except for the toe, because I just did the toe all in one go. I think it was like the 4th of December when I started these, so I just knit the first 4 stripes all in one go, and then from then on I just knit each stripe on the 5th, 6th, 7th, etc. So yeah, those are my Advent socks, and maybe I'll actually continue on those today. So those are all my whips. I'm having a lot of fun with them at the moment. I'm particularly enjoying my Sophie shawl. I think that's my favourite project at the moment, but I'm also enjoying the other projects as well. In terms of knitting slump, I don't feel like I'm in a slump anymore, but I still don't have that kind of excitement that I have had in the past for upcoming projects and things. I am excited about upcoming projects, but like not as excited. You know, I don't have cast-on-itis basically, whereas I used to kind of have that all the time. I always wanted to cast on something new, whereas now I'm like, I'll cast it on when it's time. And that segues very nicely into plans. So I finally opened that big vacuum bag of yarn that I had with all my yarn from Australia and New Zealand and other yarn in it as well. And I decided to take out this yarn that I got from Ochre Yarns, which is a yarn company from Australia. This is a merino, what is it? I think it's merino yak and silk. 60% merino, 35% yak and 5% silk. And it's a lovely pale pink colour. And I think they are intended to be like tonals or semi-solids, but all of the colours that they have in this yarn are like, they have quite a variation in the level of saturation, which is not a bad thing. I do like it. But I did feel like I had to choose the pattern carefully, because I do think that this yarn is, there's too much variation for cables or lace. I don't think that cables or lace would show very well with this yarn, but I didn't want to do a plain stockinette. I was trying to kind of pin down what exactly I needed within a pattern to use with this yarn. And ultimately, by kind of going through Ravelry and looking at patterns and trying to picture each pattern in this yarn, I narrowed it down to a pattern that just kind of has all over texture, but the texture is the same the whole way through. Like for example, sweater number 18 by My Favourite Things Knitwear has texture, but I feel like there's too much variation in the texture, and it would just look a bit messy with the variation in this colour. On the other hand, something like the waffle loop patterns by other loops. Waffle loop roll neck, I think, is the one with the all over waffle stitch. That would have been an okay option because the texture is the same the whole way through. And then the other option that I came across was the Chantal sweater by Morocco Knit, which also has the same texture all the way through. So ultimately I decided to do a Franken swatch for a few different patterns. The first pattern that I swatched for is a very small swatch that you won't see. The Lucy pullover or cardigan by the Knit Pearl Girl, and this is knit in an Andalusian stitch. So I started knitting an Andalusian stitch swatch here, and I actually can't remember what Andalusian stitch is, but basically I thought that the yarn was too busy and like these pearl bumps are quite difficult to see, and I didn't think it would look good. So I just did one row of that and then I was like, nah, not doing that. And then I swatched for the Chantal pattern by Morocco Knit. She has a few different Chantal patterns. I think she has like a V-neck. She has a regular crew neck version and the V-neck, and then she has a chunky version. I kind of knew I wasn't going to go with the chunky version because this is a fingering weight yarn, which I'm holding double. So I was expecting kind of a DK weight gauge. So I did a few inches of the Chantal stitch pattern, and then I just did a short section in stockinette, which I actually liked more than I thought I would. But I did want to go with something textured. So I also swatched for the waffle loop rollover. Roll neck, the waffle loop roll neck by Other Loops. And I was fairly confident that I was going to go with one of these, and I just didn't know which, but I did put a poll on Instagram and the Chantal sweater won, and I was kind of pleased with that because, you know, when you're like leaning towards something anyway and you just kind of hope that the poll confirms it, that's exactly what happened. So that will be my next cast on. I've kind of decided that it will be like Christmas Eve or like a Stephen's Day cast. Like I want it to be an event, you know, I want it to be a significant event day cast on. So it's going to be maybe depending on what I get done on my other whips before then, specifically my test knit and my cables jumper. If I make good progress in those by Christmas Eve, I'll start this in Christmas Eve. If not, it'll be like a lazy Stephen's Day cast on. So yeah, I am excited for this. And a lovely viewer gifted me the pattern because once I decided on the Chantal sweater, I put it to the top of my queue. And yeah, someone sent me the pattern on Ravelry, so thank you so much. I was also sent a couple of other patterns, so I just want to say thank you to those people who sent me those. I did reply to those people on Ravelry saying thank you, but I know myself, I don't always log into Ravelry that often, and so sometimes I miss messages. So if the people who sent me these patterns don't log into Ravelry, then they won't see my message saying how incredibly grateful I am to have received these patterns from you. I also had a couple of other patterns in my queue that I've decided I want to cast on over the next few weeks, and yeah, some lovely viewers just sent me those. So I do want to say a huge thank you to Catherine, who sent me the side bow slipover by Noelle Knits. I had a yarn that I was either going to make the side bow slipover or the Lulu slipover by Petite Knit with, and both patterns were gifted to me. So I'm going to use the yarn that I have for the Lulu slipover, and then I've already ordered yarn for the side bow slipover, so I can make both. So yes, thank you, Catherine, for that. And also a huge thank you to Diane, who sent me the Lulu slipover by Petite Knit. As I said, I have the yarn for that, and I got that yarn in New Zealand. I kind of knew at the time that I wanted to make a slipover with it. I just didn't know which one, so what I think it will be really nice in the Lulu slipover. So I'm very excited to cast that one on. I'm hoping to cast that on over the Christmas holidays as well, but I'm aware that I'll probably have too many webs at that point, but it is probably next on my queue. Thank you to Carmen, who sent me the Ooey Gooey socks pattern by Andrea Mary. I added those to my wish list after she released them because I have leftover spin cycle yarn from my through line shawl, and I think I only have like 15 grams left. But I was wondering what to do with that, and then I saw that she released this pattern. I really like, especially, there's like a row of, it looks like, I don't know how she did it, but the row of kind of, what do I call it? It's like a raised row. I'm going to put a picture of a little arrow. You see what I mean? It's a raised row of stitches, or like a raised line in a contrast colour. Yeah, I've decided I'll probably make these cuff down, and I'll use my spin cycle yarn for the pattern in the cuff on both socks, and I'll see how much I have left. If I have enough to do the toe pattern as well, I will. If not, I'll just do the toe in the solid colour. But I'm very excited to have an opportunity to use up the rest of that spin cycle yarn. So thank you, Carmen. And finally, thank you to Anna, who was the one who gifted me the Chantal sweater pattern by Morocco Knit. So as I said, that's number 1 in my queue, and she left a message saying, if this is number 1 in your queue, I think you should have it. So thank you so much. And so, yeah, thank you so much to all of you blown away by your generosity. I feel incredibly lucky, really honoured to have received those from you. So a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart. It means so much to me that you enjoy my videos enough to do that. So thank you so much. And then the last thing I have to talk about is just one acquisition. I signed myself up to be an affiliate for the Woolly Thistle, which is a yarn shop in the US, and they focus on selling natural wools from Europe. And the reason I signed myself up was because I saw that they were doing like a 2025 selection box, they called it, of yarn for Christmas. And in that selection box there was wool from Aran, which is an Irish brand. And I've used Aran before. I've talked about them a lot on my channel. I really like their yarns. They also stock Studio Donegal yarns, which is another very famous Irish brand of yarn. I actually haven't used Studio Donegal, funnily enough, but I know it's very popular and I would like to try it sometime, so I will at some point. Yeah, in the meantime, I just decided to sign up to the Woolly Thistle as an affiliate in case any of my viewers wanted to buy something from the Woolly Thistle and also like the channel enough to want to support it, because as an affiliate, if you use my affiliate link, I get a small percentage of the sale at no extra cost to you. I also kind of thought that if they're stocking Irish yarns, that I can kind of use that to promote Irish yarns, because I like to support Irish businesses, and if I can promote Irish yarns being sold in the US from the other side of the Atlantic, then that's a good thing for those brands, even though I'm only one person and they're big brands. But it is nice to share things that are local to me and support those businesses. So that's why I signed up. And if you would like to buy from the Woolly Thistle and you would also like to support the channel, you can do so by shopping through the affiliate link, which, as I said, I would get a small percentage from at no extra cost to you. No pressure. So I will leave that link down below. If you want to shop from the Woolly Thistle, you can use my affiliate link if you want to also support my channel. As part of signing up to their affiliate program, they also sent me a skein of their Rambler yarn. So I didn't expect to receive this as part of signing up to their affiliate program. I kind of thought there was going to be some catch. You know, I was filling out all the forms online and then it said I had some credit to use on a skein of Rambler. And I was expecting it to be like, I don't know, to reject me because I was not in the US or something. But it all went through. And even, to be honest, I didn't really believe it until it showed up at my door. I did have to pay customs on it. It was like a €15 customs fee, which is fine, considering I didn't pay for the yarn. So that was amazing. I got the colour Winter Sky, and this is 80-10-10 Dorset Corriedale, Grey Romney, and I don't know if there's a third breed in there, but it's like covered up by the label. But anyway, it's a fingering weight yarn and in this lovely blue colour. Sorry, my lighting is really bad today. It's the joys of filming in the winter. Really nice cool toned blue, and I'll be honest, this doesn't feel like any sock yarn that I've used before. It feels like knitting for olive merino, except a little bit thicker. I think that yarn is light fingering and this just feels like a slightly thicker version of it, but it does have that kind of dry, almost papery feeling to it. And I think it'll be really interesting to knit with. So very excited to knit up a pair of socks with this. It's really nice to get to experience yarns from other places in the world that are not very accessible to me. Like, I don't know when I would ever get to try this yarn ever again, but I will try it out now and I'll report back because I'm very excited to try this. And that is everything for today. So thank you so much for watching. If you're still here, thank you for sticking it out to the end. If you did like this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up or subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed and you'd like to see more videos like this. It would mean a lot to me. Feel free to leave a comment down below. Let me know what you're working on, or if you have any questions about anything. Everything that I've talked about will be linked in the description box, but if you want me to clarify anything, I'll be happy to answer in the comments. And otherwise, I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.